Hi. This will be a lecture on the reflection principle in combinatorics. So before we get to that, I would just like to introduce a symbol. Okay. So the symbol is this. Okay. So I've got an N and I've got an R. Okay. And N and R are numbers like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. There's no decimals involved or not even negatives or anything. They're just regular whole numbers, if you know the name. So what this represents is it represents the number of ways of choosing R objects out of N objects. Okay. So this is just a symbol for this. Okay. And it is also sometimes written as NCR, and the C stands for choose. Okay. So it is sometimes called N choose R. So both of these symbols mean the same thing. And if you go on the internet, you will find a nice formula for this. So this formula is usually written in this manner. Okay. Now, in case you don't know what these exclamation marks mean, is say I have a number. Okay. Again, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, one of the numbers. Okay. And I have a K exclamation mark. So it is usually called K factorial. And what this stands for is just 1 into 2 into 3, so on till K. You just multiply all the numbers from 1 to K. Okay. So for instance, say we wanted to calculate 5 choose 3. Okay. So you also write it as 5C3. Okay. And of course, this will be the number of ways of choosing 3 objects out of 5. You're given 5 objects and you have to choose 3. So what is the number of ways of doing that? Well, that's what this symbol stands for. These two symbols stand for. So the way you would calculate it is using this formula. Is you first take 5 factorial upon 3 factorial into 2 factorial. So writing it all out is 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5 divided by 1 into 2 into 3, and then again you have 1 into 2. This is what it will be. We don't have to worry about calculating it right now, because if we need to we can, but let's not worry about that right now. The main important thing to remember is what we have to remember is what this symbol stands for, what these two symbols stand for. They stand for the same thing, and it is this particular thing. That is all we need to remember right now. Okay, so now we are going to come to our first problem as such. So the problem is this. Okay, uh, we have a grid. Okay, we have a grid as in these things. So these are all 1 cross 1 squares. They are all 1 unit long. So that unit can be meters, centimeters, whatever. But they are all the same dimensional squares. Okay. And this point is 0, comma 0. Okay. Now the problem is there is a person standing at the origin. Okay. And that person has to now reach the point 20, comma 10. Okay, he has to reach the point 20, comma 10, and the only kind of movements he is allowed to make are movements of this sort or movements of this sort. Okay, so he can either move one unit to the right and 1 unit up, or 1 unit to the right and 1 unit down. Okay, so for instance, if he had to reach, say, this square. Okay, so sorry, this point. Now this point is it's 3, comma 1. Okay, so this is one possible path he could take. So there are 3 steps involved here. The first one is this, the second one is this, and the third one is this. So this is one possible path. The another possible path could be, instead of going up on the first step, he could go down on the first step. So say he goes this way and then from here and here. So there are multiple paths. So what we are interested in is the number of paths from 0, 0 to 20, 10. We want to find the number of such paths. All right. So here's our first observation. Okay. So we have two types of movements we can make. So there's a type 1 movement, which is this thing. And there's a type 2 movement, which is the other thing. Okay. So let's consider one particular path from 0, 0 to 20, 10. So there will be X steps of type 1 and Y steps of type 2. Okay. The order in which that person takes those steps, we don't really know now. What we just know is the number. So that's X and Y. Okay. So now, type 1 and type 2 movements, the one thing they do have in common is that both of them take the person 1 unit to the right. So after doing all of these steps, so the person takes X plus Y steps in all, and on each step he moves 1 unit to the right, and he ends up on 20, 10. So that means X plus Y should equal 20, because 20, 10 is 20 units to the right and 10 units up, and he takes X plus Y steps in all, and each step takes him 1 unit to the right. So that means X plus Y should equal 20. So now we look at the how much the person travels upwards. So the person travels 10 units upwards in the end. Collectively, after doing these X plus Y steps, the person has moved 10 units upwards. Now type 1 movements take him 1 unit upwards, and type 2 movements take him 1 unit downwards. You can just see the way type 1 and type 2 movements are. Okay. So that means X minus Y should equal 10. The reason I'm writing X minus Y here is the X is there are X type 1 movements, and they all take him 1 unit upwards. So they in all contribute X units upwards, and type 2 movements take him 1 unit downwards. So they in all contribute minus Y units upwards. Okay, it's another way of saying they take him to Y units downwards. Okay, so we definitely have this. Okay, so no matter what path that person takes to 20, 10, these two equations should be satisfied. So now, as you can see, these are simultaneous equations. So we solve them, and solving them gives us that X is equal to 15 and Y is equal to 5. Okay. So here is our first very interesting observation, that no matter what path that person takes to 20, 10, there have to be exactly 15 steps of type 1 and 5 steps of type 2. Okay, so that itself is a fairly novel kind of observation. But now how does this help us? Okay, how does this help us? So what I'm going to do is, instead of looking at paths, instead of looking at paths on the grid, okay, these are grid. Instead of looking at paths on the grid, I'm going to represent these paths in a slightly different way. Okay, so the way I'm going to do that is, each path I will represent it as a sequence of ones and twos. Okay, so now say we are looking at this particular path. Okay, the one I've just circled. Okay, so there is first the person makes a type 1 step, so I take a 1. Then he makes another type 1 step, so I write it 1. And then he makes a type 2 step, so I write it 2. Okay, so this is how I will be representing paths, as a sequence of ones and twos. Okay, and I'm sure you can see that if I have different paths, then the sequence that I get should be different, as in two different paths cannot give me the same sequence of ones and twos, right? And similarly, if I have a particular sequence of ones and twos, sorry, if I have two different sequences of ones and twos, they have to give me different paths. I mean, this is fairly easy to see, right? Okay, so we have gotten a different way of looking at paths. Okay, now, okay, so I'll just take a new page here. So what we are interested in is number of paths from 0 comma 0 to 20 comma 10. Okay, what we do know is that there are exactly 15 type 1 steps and 5 type 2 steps. Okay, so now we are interested in these kinds of paths. So as sequences of ones and twos, what are we looking for? Okay, so firstly, that sequence should be of length 20, because there are 20 steps in all, correct? So it's going to be, you know, 1 2, and then there's a bunch of things, and then there's going to be 20 spots in all, okay, for the sequence. And what is the other thing we know? The other thing we know is that exactly 15 of these spots have ones in them, and exactly 5 of these spots have twos in them. Okay, and we also said that different paths give different sequences and different sequences give different paths. So really, counting this number of paths is the same as counting the number of sequences of ones and twos of length 20, and they have 15 ones. Okay, the reason I'm not writing 5 twos is because, see, there are only 20 spots, and exactly 15 of them go to ones, and the only thing apart from ones that you're allowed to put in the sequence is twos. So the rest of the 5 spots, so the remaining 5 spots have to be occupied by twos, you know. So I don't really need to write that once I've written there are 15 ones. So, you know, so to count the number of paths, we could just as well count this new thing. Okay, and now we'll see why this is much easier. Okay, see, so now we have this sequence. So we have 20. We want to construct a sequence. Okay, consisting of ones and twos, which is 20, which is, you know, which has length 20, and it has exactly 15 ones. So how do you go about constructing a sequence? Well, that is pretty easy. You have 20 spots. You just select 15 out of them, and you put ones in them. Okay, so maybe I put a 1 here and a 1 here, and I don't select this one, so I don't put a 1 there. And then I've got a whole bunch of others, and maybe another 1 lands here and another 1 lands here. Okay, so now once I've selected those 15 spots to put the ones in, I just put I just put 2 in the remaining spots. That goes without saying. Okay, so really, this number of sequences of ones and twos of length 20 with 15 ones, that number is really the same as the number of ways sorry, I don't know what happened there. um, it is really the same as the number of ways of selecting 15 spots out of 20 spots. Okay, and notice that we know how to do this. Okay, because see, it's just a difference of language. Here we are seeing spots. Okay, and in one of the previous slides, what we said was objects. So this new thing that we have, okay, it is really the same as the number of ways of selecting 15 objects out of 20, and we know how to do that. Well, that number is just 20 and 15. Okay, which is the same as sorry, you also write it as 20 C15, right? That's what you write it as, right? And we know how to calculate this. We using the factorials and everything. Okay, so we've got 15 factorial here and 5 factorial. So this is our final answer. Okay, so this is the number of paths from 0 comma 0 to 20 comma 10. Okay, using only the two movements that we were allowed to. So I hope that that was clear. So, and this also shows why, I introduced this symbol. Okay, because this does come up naturally a lot of times. Okay, so here's our second problem. Okay, again we are going to have a grid as before. Okay, so we have these things. But there is a slight difference here. So now this is, again 0 comma 0, but this time we are not going to start from 0 comma 0. We are going to start from 1 comma 1. Okay, and the point we have to reach is 25 comma 15. Okay, and again we are going to count the number of paths, but with a slight condition. Okay, we are going to count the number of paths from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15, which do not touch the x-axis. Okay, this is what we want to now calculate. Okay, now if you have the option, you might actually want to pause the video for here for a second and see why this is actually a much trickier problem than what we did before. Okay, uh, and after looking at it for quite some time, you realize the technique that we used earlier, when we calculated from 0 comma 0 to 20 comma 10. Okay, here we counted without these paths, we counted without any restriction, right? So if you spend some time, you will realize that this new problem that we are worried about, this one, is not as simple as this. It needs some cleverness on our part. All right, so this is how we will do it. Okay, now the first step that we take is we will not actually count this particular thing. Okay, even though that is eventually what we want to find out. Okay, we will actually count the number of paths from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15, which do touch the x axis. Okay, and by touch I mean it could very well go below the x axis also. The x axis, of course, is this horizontal line on which 0 comma 0 lies. Okay, so we will instead calculate this new thing. Okay, and the reason it works is, okay, because suppose we calculate this thing. Okay, so I'm going to yeah, I'll denote it by some new color. Okay, so I'm going to denote it, so I'm going to draw a red star here. Okay, so suppose we calculated this, this red star, right? Now the other thing that we know how to do is we know how to calculate the number of paths from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15. We know how to calculate this. Okay, it's really the same thing. I mean, the logic is the same as calculating 0 comma 0 to 20 comma 10. It's just different numbers, that's all. Okay, so the logic is the same. So we do know how to calculate this. And the point is, a path from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15 can either touch the x-axis or not touch it. Okay, so they can be split into two sets, right? You can partition them into two sets. Each path is either the red star or not the red star. Okay, so if we calculate the if we calculate the red star quantity, then just subtracting it from Okay, I'll use a different color, say this blue star. Okay, this blue star is the number of paths from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15. So if we calculate red star and we subtract it from blue star, we should get what we want. Correct? So that is why, even though it might seem as if we are solving the exact opposite problem, it does, it will eventually solve the problem that we do want to solve. Okay, so now we are going to calculate this red star. Okay, and this is where we are going to use, what is the main topic of this lecture, which is the reflection principle. Okay, so what are we going to reflect exactly? So I'm going to take a new page. Okay, so now let's notice one thing. Okay, say this is my grid. Okay, I'm going to draw a slightly bigger piece of the grid now. Okay, so you have these things. Right? Yeah, so now say the point, whatever 25 comma 15 is somewhere here, and you start from 1 comma 1. Okay, now suppose you have a path from 1 comma 1, from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15, that does touch the x-axis. Okay, so the path is something like, okay, let's say it first goes here and then goes here, and then whatever it does something and reaches here. So it does touch the x-axis. So what I do is I look for the first time when it hits the x-axis. So this x-axis is here. Okay. So what is the first time it hits the x-axis? It is this point. I'm going to use a different color to, to mark it. So this is the first time it hits the x-axis. Correct. So what I will do is I will take I will take the part of the path before it touches the x-axis for the first time, right? So it is this part of the path, correct? The one circled in red, okay? And I will reflect it across the x-axis. So the rest of the path remains the same, and I just reflect this red circled portion across the x-axis, okay? So what will I get? So what do I end up getting? Okay, so I'm going to get something like this. Okay, so now this new thing that we have got, that starts from 1 comma minus 1, and it still ends at 25 comma 15. Okay, so by reflecting across the x-axis, what we have gotten is we have gotten a path from 1 comma minus 1 to 25 comma 15. Okay, so we got a path from 1 comma minus 1 to 25 comma 15. Okay, now here's the thing to notice. Okay, any path from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15 that touches the x-axis, when you reflect it the way we reflected it, like you look at the first time it touches the x-axis and reflect the part of the path before that, you reflect it across the x-axis, that is always going to give you a path from 1 comma minus 1 to 25 comma 15. And here is the other interesting thing. Suppose we have a path from 1 comma minus 1 to 25 comma 15. So I'll take a new page here because I want to draw another diagram. Okay, so I'm not going to draw the whole grid this time. Okay, so this is just the point 1 comma minus 1. Okay, and suppose we have a path from 1 comma minus 1 to 25 comma 15, which is somewhere here, right? So whatever this path is, okay, now notice that it definitely has to cross the x-axis. Okay, because these 2 points, they lie on opposite sides of the x-axis. So whatever the path is, it has to cross the x-axis at some point. So what we do is we do the same thing again. We look for the first time when it hits the x-axis, right? So we look at this point. Okay, and now we reflect this across the x-axis as well. So what that gives us is, that will give us a path from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15 that does touch the x-axis. Okay, so we are going to get the reflection of this. So the reflection of this, not totally accurate, but something like this. Okay, so we are going to get a path from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15 that does touch the x-axis. Okay, so so what we have gotten is, okay, so now let's just see what we have gotten. So on one hand, we've got this one box. Okay, what that box contains is paths from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15 that touch the x-axis. Okay, and on the other hand, we've got this other box. Okay, which contains paths from minus 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15. And remember, there is no restriction on the second box. Okay, it contains all possible paths from minus 1 comma 1. Sorry, I messed up, sorry, it should be 1 comma minus 1. I'm wrong there. Let me just see if I can erase this. Okay, yes, so we've got 1 comma minus 1. Sorry for that. So we have got these two boxes. All right, and using this reflection thing, reflecting across the x-axis, what we have managed to do is pair off the things from this box and this box. Okay, and we have managed to pair it off in such a way that given something from, okay, let's give colors here again. So this is the red box and this is the blue box, right? So given something from the red box, we have a unique thing in the blue box that it corresponds to. We have paired it off with a particular thing from the blue box, and we've gone the other way also. So given something in the blue box, we got something in the red box. Okay, and we are doing the same thing every time. We are just reflecting across the x-axis. We are looking for the first time when the path touches the x-axis, and then we reflect just the part before that across the x-axis. Okay, and the advantage of doing that is, by pairing them off in such a way, what we have gotten is that both of these boxes contain the same number of things. They contain different things, but they contain the same number of things. And our original problem was to find, the number of paths that satisfied certain properties. Okay, so instead of counting things in the red box, we could just as well count things in the blue box. And the reason that is much easier is because we know how to do this as well. It is the same logic as counting paths from 0 comma 0 to 20 comma 10 that we did previously. Okay, so what we have gotten is number of paths from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15 that touch the x-axis. This is equal to number of paths from, sorry, I'm making the same mistake again, 1 comma minus 1 to 25 comma 15, and there is no restriction here, and we know how to calculate this. Okay, so we can do the same thing again. So here our x is, we have to move 24 steps in all. So x plus y will be 24 and x minus y is going to be 16, because we have to move from minus 1 to 15, which is 16 steps upwards. So that is 16, and that gives us x is equal to 20 and y is equal to 4. Okay, and doing the same thing as before. Okay, it gives us that the number of paths from 1 comma minus 1 to 25 comma 15 is 24 choose 4. It is the number of ways of choosing 4 objects out of 24. Or as we know, we can also write it as this. Okay. And because of this equality that we have gotten here, okay, this now that shows us that this number is equal to equal to this thing, the number of paths from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15 that touch the x-axis. All right. So now we are just going to go back and revisit what we had. Okay. What we had was here. What we were trying to calculate was red star. Correct. We were trying to calculate red star. Okay. And we have managed to do that. In the latest slide, that's what we have managed to do. And now we just need to calculate blue star. And blue star, again, we know, we can do the same thing with blue star. Well, let's do the same thing here. Again, x and y. We have to move 24 steps to the right because you want to move from 1 to 25. So x plus y will be 24. Okay. And now from 1 to 15, that's 14 steps upwards. So x minus y will be equal to 14. So that means adding up gives us x is equal to 19 and y is equal to 5. And that gives us a total of 24 choose 5. So that means blue star is 24 choose 5. So let's go back to our original slide. What we wanted to do was we want to subtract red star from blue star, and that we said will give us our answer. Okay, what we were looking for is this, what I've just underlined. Okay, so yeah, right. So what we had was 24C5, right, minus 24C4. That was what we had because, sorry, we got that blue star is 24C5 and we wanted to subtract red star from blue star. So we are going to subtract 24C4 from 24C5. Okay. And that is how we get our answer. This thing is the number of paths from, so this is our answer. This is the number of paths from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15 that do not touch the x axis. And this idea, this idea of reflecting paths across the x axis, that is called the reflection principle. Okay. And this is the main point for talk of this lecture. Okay. So I'll just recap this before, because what comes next is, I'm going to use this, the logic that we used in the reflection principle. Okay. The logic that we used in doing this, I'm going to use it in a couple of different places. So so the basic idea was, oops, we had this grid. Okay, we started from 1 comma 1 and we wanted to reach 25 comma 15, and what we originally wanted to count was the number of paths from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15 which did not touch the x-axis. And we said, no, it is better to count the number of paths from 1 comma 1 to 25 comma 15 that do touch the x-axis. And we said, okay, now if a certain path touches the x-axis, okay, and then then goes to 25 comma 15, then we will look for the first time that it hits the x-axis, so this point, and then we will reflect the part lying before that point, we will reflect it across the x-axis. So that gives us, it's not very well done, but I hope you get the point. When we reflect it across the x-axis, we get something from 1 comma minus 1 to 25 comma 15, we get a path. And what we showed was, that we can pair of these paths, in a way that shows that they are equal in number. They are not the same thing, but they are equal in number. And that is why this is important, because all we wanted to do was count. So as long as they are equal in number, we are fine. And that is what the whole reflection principle was about. So this was just a quick recap to to just sum up what we did in this second part. And this entire logic, as I said, is called the reflection principle. Okay, so now we are going to come to our next problem. So the problem statement won't exactly involve paths, but we will be using the same logic as before. So yeah, here's the problem. Okay, so there's two people, say A and B, and they are standing for an election. Okay, and there are 100 people voting. Okay, and at the end of it, A ends up with 70 votes and B ends up with 30 votes. Okay, so what we want to find is the number of voting sequences. I'll just call them votings, where A leads the entire way. Okay, so this is what we are interested in. So what exactly is going on here? Okay, so now the 100 people, when they vote, they are always made to stand in the same order. Okay, and you can imagine as if there is a live scoreboard of sorts. Okay, so say the first person votes for A, so then it's 1 to A and 0 to B. Say the second person also votes for A, so now it's 2 to A and 0 to B. Then say the third person now votes for B, now it's 2 to 1. Okay, so it will go on, it will go on this way, and then finally it will end with A getting 70 and B getting 30. Okay, so this, this kind of scorecard completely describes, a voting sequence. Okay, so this is one way of representing the voting. Now I'm going to suggest another way of representing a voting, which will be equally accurate, in the sense that if I give you one voting of this type, I'm going to get exactly one thing of the other type. So what is the other way of representing a voting? So instead of keeping a track of A and B, I'm going to keep a track of two different things. Okay, so first I'm going to keep track of this thing called N. So what is N going to be? N is going to be the number of votes cast. Okay, and the other thing I'm going to keep track of is A minus B. That is the difference between the number of votes A and B have received. Okay, so let's convert this, this first thing into the second thing. Okay, so now for the first one, there is one vote cast, and A minus B will be 1, because A has received one vote and B has received none. Now for the second, N will be 2, because now 2 votes have been cast, and A minus B will be 2. Now for the third one, N will be 3 and A minus B will be 1, because A has received 2 votes and B has received 1. And then this will continue so on, and finally N will be 100, because when the election ends, 100 people have cast their vote, and A minus B has to be 70 minus 30, because we've been told that is how the election ends. Okay, So A minus B will be 40 in the end. Okay. So I'll leave this up to you to check. Okay. But my claim is, suppose I give you, a sequence of, this for a sequence of type 1. Okay. As in something like this. So if I give you, the actual scorecard, okay, then you should be able to produce, a sequence of N and A comma B. Okay. You should be able to produce a unique sequence of A of N and A minus B. Okay. And it goes the other way also. If I give you, if I give you the data for N and A minus B, then that should give a unique sequence of, A and B. It should give me a unique, this scorecard, this, it should give me a unique thing of this first type. Okay. So I'll leave this up to you to check. If you want a hint, I'll give you a hint. See. Okay. So N is always going to be A plus B. N will be A plus B, as in N will always be the number of votes cast for A plus the number of votes cast for B till a particular point. And you already know A minus B. So then using simultaneous equations, you should be able to figure out A and B. Okay. So that is the hint essentially. Okay. So now how do we convert this problem into parts? Okay. So here's one way. Okay. Now we are going to keep a track of N and A minus B. Okay. So what does keep track mean? Okay. So let's just recall what we had on the previous slide. Okay. On the previous slide, if you took N and A comma B, so first it was 1 comma 1, then it was 2 comma 2, then it was 3 comma 1, and then it went on so on, and then finally we know we always ended at 100 comma 40. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot this sequence on the grid. Okay. So let's draw our grid here, our usual grid. All right. So we've got 0 comma 0 here again. Okay. This is the x-axis. This is the y-axis. So what I'm going to do is, on the x-axis the n's will be plotted, and on the y-axis A minus B will be plotted. All right. So now you always start at 0 comma 0 clearly, because at the start no votes have been cast, and so the difference between the votes for A and B is 0. So let's get our grid here. Okay. So why don't we follow this sequence? So the first point that comes is 1 comma 1. All right. So 1 comma 1 is here. So we get a step like this. The next one is 2 comma 2. 2 comma 2 is here. So we get a step like this. The next one is 3 comma 1. 3 comma 1 is here. So we get a step like this. All right. And then finally it goes on and on and on. And then finally you always end up at this point, which is 100 comma 40. We always end up at this point. Okay. Because that is how the election ends, as we just saw. Now the point I'm trying to make here is, okay, if you look at what happens to, what happens to N comma A minus B. Okay. So when there is a vote for A, notice that you always get a step of this form. Okay. You always go 1 unit to the right and 1 unit up. Okay. And the reason for that is because, whenever a vote is cast, N changes to N plus 1. Okay. So that means there is a move to the right. And A minus B becomes A plus 1 minus B, because now A has gotten another vote. Okay. So this thing also increases by 1. Okay. And that is why you get a step of this type. Now what happens when there is a vote for B? Okay, when there is a vote for B, you get a step of this type. Okay, and the reason for that is, again, n changes to n plus 1 because there has been one more vote cast. Now what happens to A minus B is it becomes A minus B plus 1. Okay, and the reason for that is, now A minus B becomes this because there is one more vote for B. So we have to subtract B plus 1 votes from A. And this is the same as saying A minus B minus 1. Okay, so A minus B becomes A minus B minus 1, which is the same as saying it reduces by 1. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Okay, so when there is a vote for A, there is a step of this form, and when there is a vote for B, there is a step of this form. Okay, so to use the language we used before, a vote for A is the same as a type 1 step. Okay, so I'll draw that type 1 step. This is what you get. And a vote for B is the same as a type 2 step. Okay, and that is something like this. Okay, so this is the important point. So this is how we have converted our problem from tracking n comma A minus B to counting some paths. Okay, this is how you do it. Okay, we are plotting n comma A minus B, and now we are getting paths like we saw here. We just got a path here, right? So now let's see what kind of paths we are looking for. Okay, so what is definitely clear is we are getting, sorry, what we are definitely going to get is a path from 0 comma 0 to 100 comma 40. Okay, the path is definitely going to satisfy this condition. Okay, because as we saw before, it always starts at 0 comma 0 and it always ends at 100 comma 40. This is where the election always ends. So the path is definitely from 0 comma 0 to 100 comma 40. Now what does it mean for A to be in the lead? So suppose at a particular point, suppose A is in the lead. Okay, so what that means is A has more votes than B, and that is the same as saying A minus B is greater than 0, right? It is the same as saying A is in the lead. Okay, and what we are looking for is A is always in the lead. Okay, this is what we are looking for. Okay, so that means, to going back to our previous picture, A minus B always has to be greater than 0, and that is the same as saying this path, the just circle the path. So this path that we will get, right? The path always has to be above the x-axis after 0 comma 0. I mean, at 0 comma 0 it has to be on the x-axis. There is no option. But after that, at all points it has to be above the x-axis. Okay, so here is the second thing it has to satisfy. Path is always above the x-axis. Okay, this is the second thing it has to satisfy. So now the problem is starting to look like something we have done before. Okay, now the problem has reduced to finding the number of paths from 0 comma 0 to 100 comma 40, which do not touch the x-axis after 0 comma 0. Okay, this is what we are looking for. Now previously, previously what we saw was the path did not start from 0 comma 0. When we previously counted paths that did not touch the x-axis, when we first introduced the reflection principle, we were not looking at a path that started from 0 comma 0. We were looking at a path that started from 1 comma 1. And if you go back and see, that actually played a big role. Okay, that played a huge role uh, in in simplifying matters. For example, let's just try to see what happens when we use that usual reflection principle logic. Okay, so say I have a path from 0 comma 0 and it has to end at 100 comma 40. So now if you were going to go apply the same procedure as we did in the reflection principle, we would first count the paths from 0 comma 0 to 100 comma 40 that did touch the x-axis. Okay, and then what we would do is say this was one of the paths we got. Okay, then it went wherever it went to 100 comma 40. So we would look for the first time that it touched the x-axis. So that is this point, and then we would reflect it across the x-axis. Okay, so then we would get a path here. So the trouble here is, after reflecting, because 0 comma 0 lies on the x-axis, this is the x-axis, because 0 comma 0 lies on the x-axis, we don't get a point on the other side of the x-axis. We don't cross the x-axis as such. Okay, so the good thing about the reflection principle is gone. The good thing about the reflection principle was, by reflecting, we could then freely count paths from some other point to 100 comma 40 without considering whether it touched the x-axis or not. Okay, but now if we try to do that, that restriction does not go. We still are looking for paths from 0 comma 0 to 100 comma 40 that touch the x-axis. There is still a restriction on us, and so the logic that we used in the reflection principle does not immediately help us here. Okay, so this is going to need a little more work from us, but it is just a little more work because here is the thing to notice. We are saying A always has to be in the lead. So that means the first vote always has to be for A. Okay, so first vote is always cast for A. Okay, and that removes a whole bunch of uncertainty. Okay, so if we go on, if we look at what happens on the grid again. Okay, 0 comma 0. Okay, the first move is always to 1 comma 1. Okay, because on the first one n always becomes 1 and A minus B automatically becomes 1 because the first vote is always for A. Okay, so the first move is always of this form, is always a type 1 move, and it takes us to 1 comma 1. Okay, so effectively what we are looking for, so number of paths. Okay, what we were looking for, number of paths from 0 comma 0 to 100 comma 40 that don't touch sorry touch the x-axis after 0 comma 0. And what we have seen here is this is essentially the same thing as the number of paths from 1 comma 1 to 100 comma 40 that do not touch the x-axis at all. Okay. And the reason that is because we just saw the first move always takes us to 1, 1, and we are saying here that the paths are not allowed to touch the x-axis after 0, 0. So that means we are counting the number of paths from 1, 1 to 100, 40 that do not touch the x-axis at all. Okay. And now we can safely use a reflection principle. Okay. Because now reflecting across the x-axis would give us, you know, something on the other side of the x-axis, and now we can freely count the paths. Okay. So now if you remember the logic that we applied, this is the same as number of paths from 1, -1 to 100, 40, and that's it. There are no restrictions now. Okay. And again, we know how to do this. Okay. So the way to do that is, we want from 1, -1 to 100, 40. Okay. So now, again, following the same method as before, x is the number of type 1 steps. We have to have 99, sorry, making a mistake here. The total number of steps to the right is 99 because we want to go from 1 to 100. Okay, so x plus y has to be 99 and x minus will have to be 41 because we want to go from -1 to 40. Okay, so then solving this gives us that x is equal to 70 and y is equal to 29. Okay, and then again by the same logic as before, the total number of ways is 90, choose 29. Okay, so this is the number of votings. So 99, choose 29. Number of votings where A leads the entire way. So that gives us our answer. Okay, so now before we go to the next topic, I I want to say a few things about what we have done till now. Okay, so mostly until now we have been, looking at this grid, right? And we have been looking at paths, right? And the paths, we were allowed to go this way or this way. These were the movements that we were allowed. And we've answered some questions. The first basic question was, if we start from 0, 0 and we want to reach a certain point, then what are the number of paths? We did that. Then we did, if we start from 1, 1 and we want to reach a certain point, what is the number of paths that do not touch the x-axis, or rather we calculated the number of paths which do touch the x-axis, things like that, right? So I just want to say that the problems don't end here. Okay, you can play around as much as you want with this, and there will be new problems. There will be really interesting problems also. So for instance, you know uh, instead of these moves, right? Suppose you are only allowed to make moves of this sort or this sort, so you can only go vertically or horizontally. Then in that case, what is the number of paths, right? What is the number of paths from 0, 0 to to some point here? Okay, that could be a question. You could maybe try working on that. That is actually a little, easier, right? But you could still, try to do that. Or maybe, in this case also, say you start from 1, 1 and you want to reach a certain point. Then what is the number of paths that touch the x-axis. So here, that question is a little, little confusing, because you know when I say these two movements, I am assuming you can only go up or you can go to the right. Okay, but suppose I allowed you to also go down. Okay, so suppose I also allowed you to go down, and okay, so let's just keep, you can either go up, down, or to the right. Okay, so in that case, what is the number of paths starting from 1 comma 1 to a certain point that touch the x-axis or cross the or do not touch the x-axis? Okay, maybe you could try to calculate that. Does the logic that we used for the reflection principle, does it work there? You can play around as much as you want with these things. Okay, and there are a whole lot of interesting questions. I just wanted to say that. And there is another thing that I wanted to point out. Okay, so we've been using this trick, okay, to kind of solve our problems. So the trick basically involves pairing things from different sets. Okay, we have been using this technique a lot, and we have been using this technique to change our problems, to change our problems from one form to the other, so that the answer that we get is still the same, but we are solving a different and slightly easier problem. Okay, so we have been doing things like that a lot, right? So I just wanted to point out the idea behind this, because maybe I rushed through the idea a couple of times before this. So the idea basically is this. Okay, I have two boxes. Okay, let's call them the red box. Okay, and the other one, let's call it the blue box. Okay, so what we were doing was we were pairing things off from the red and blue boxes. Okay, we were pairing things off, and we were pairing them off in such a way that any red thing had exactly one blue thing with which it was paired, and every blue thing had exactly one red thing with which it was paired. Okay, so nothing from either boxes was unpaired, and everything from both the boxes had exactly one pair. And the reason we were doing that is because we till now we only wanted to calculate the number of things in a particular box. So we started with, we wanted to find the number of things in the red box. So we found another box. Okay, we found the blue box. Okay, and we paired things off. Okay, and then we counted things in the blue box, and we were able to do that. Okay, and the reason we were able to do that is because when we pair off things the way we have, there are going to be an equal number of things in both boxes. Okay, and this actually is a very popular thing in maths. It's called a bijection. Okay, it's called bijection. Okay, and this is an extremely useful and popular technique in math. You'll use it in all sorts of places. So I just wanted to clarify these few things before we go on to the next thing, which is part of the title of this talk. Right. So now we are going to come to the last topic in our lecture. Okay, so this topic, it has a name. Okay, it's called random walks on integers. Okay, so I hope you guys know what integers are. If you don't, it's not that complicated what they are. They're just numbers, like 0, 1, 2, so on. Okay, so you've got all these numbers, and you also have things like -1, -2, -3, so on. Okay, so these things, they are collectively called integers, and there is a special symbol for this. The symbol is this. Okay, it's a slightly fancy head. Okay, so this last topic will be random walks on integers. So what is a random walk? Okay, so you can think of random walk as a sort of game. Okay, so let's we can kind of draw the integers. Okay. Okay, so let's say this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4. Okay. And the way this game is played is you start at 0. Okay. And you have a coin with you at all times. Okay. And let's assume it's a fair coin. Okay. Okay. And by fair coin, we mean heads comes up with probability half, and tails comes up with probability half. And by probability half mean, yeah, by half we mean, it's heads or tails, the outcomes are equally likely. There is an equal chance that either of them will come. So this half. Okay. And the way you play this game is you first start at 0. Okay. Now you toss your coin. Okay. Suppose it comes up heads, then you move one step to the right. Okay. Now you are at 1. You toss the coin again. Okay. Say it comes up heads again. So now you move another step to the right. Now you toss the coin again. Say it comes up tails this time. Okay. Then you move to the left. Okay. And you keep doing this, for you just keep on doing this. Okay. So that's where the name comes from. The random comes from, you don't know where you're going to go at each point. You're not sure whether you're going to go to the right or to the left. Walk, because it's kind of like you're walking. And integers comes from, the walking is being done on integers, right? You're walking on the integers. So that's where the name comes from, random walks on integers. Okay. And now you could just as well take a biased coin. Okay. Say you have a biased coin. Okay. So in that case, heads is say 0.7 and tails is 0.3. Okay. Okay. And you could do the same thing all over again. Okay. And this in advanced probability, this is a very popular and very well studied problem. Things like what happens exactly when you do this. Okay. So a big point of study is what happens in the long run when you do this. So for example, in the long run, say you have a fair coin. Are you going to keep coming back to 0? That is one question. Or are you sure to come back to 0 if you play with a fair coin? Or another question would be, if you play with a biased coin, okay, are you more likely to to go to the right? Okay. So you have your heads is more like your heads is more likely in the biased coin that we have taken. Okay. So kind of intuitively you're going to get a lot more heads than tails. So does this mean if you play with a biased coin, you're never going to come back to 0? You're just going to keep on going to the right? you know that is one question. Or if your coin is biased the other way, if your probability of tails is greater than heads, does that mean you are going to just drift off to the left side? you know there are a lot of questions like these. We are not going to answer these because that they need a lot more work. But we are going to find some small things about this using the things that we have learned, namely the reflection principle. We are going to use the reflection principle to solve some problems related to this. Okay. So now before we go to the problems, okay, let's just get used to this whole concept. Okay. So now suppose we are looking at what happens after tossing the coin 4 times. That is, after we take 4 steps. Okay. So now again, I'm going to assume fair coin. All right. And we are going to make 4 moves. Okay. And we want to see what happens after 4 moves. Now when I say 4 moves, I could just as well tell what the results of the coins were, of the coin tosses were, because that's all that matters, right? And because what happens every time a head comes up or a tail comes up. So say one thing is H T T H. Okay, one outcome could be this, another outcome could be H, H, T, H, or you could just have something really crazy happen and all of them are heads, or all of them could be tails. Okay, so first we kind of want to study the chances of these things happening. Okay, and so how do we study the chances of this happening? So if you have some slight experience with probability, say if you're in high school or something, you would immediately calculate these things as okay, I have four of these things. Okay, and I'm tossing the coin freely every time, as in it does not matter what happened previously. Whenever I toss the coin freshly, right? So I've got four things here, and all of them head or tail happens with probability half. So you would just multiply this way. Okay, and you would get 1 upon 16, and you would do the same thing for all of these, and you would get that all of these have a chance 1 upon 16 of happening. Okay, now if you don't have some experience with probability, okay, uh, I'll tell you how we usually calculate probabilities. The way probabilities are usually calculated is, okay, there is some total number of outcomes possible. Okay, and what we want is the number of favorable outcomes. Okay, and you just take these two numbers, okay, and you divide them. Okay, you just take their division. So for instance, now let's forget what we have done here. Let's forget this, and suppose we wanted to calculate the probability of H, T, T, H. Okay, so now the number of favorable outcomes is 1, because there is exactly one thing we are looking for. Okay, and what is the total number of outcomes? So we are looking for 4 tosses, right? There are going to be 4 tosses. Okay, so what is the total number of outcomes? So we have 4 spots to fill. Okay, so we've got and each of them has 2 choices. So one way you could calculate is you could just multiply all of them. Okay, and that would give you 16. Putting it in the denominator would still give you 16. Okay, the reason this gives the total number of choices is because for the first spot we have 2 choices. It could be H or T. Now the second one also has 2 choices, H or T, H or T, H or T. Okay, and you are choosing freely, so it's kind of like saying, suppose you have H at the first one, then I still have 2 choices, H or T, and then 2 choices here, H or T, and 2 choices here, H or T. Or if I have tails first, then I have H or T, H or T, H or H or T. Okay, so that's why you multiply all of them, because for every fixed choice you have a bunch of choices later. Okay, so that's how you get 1 upon 16 here. Okay, now you could do the same thing for 5 tosses. Okay, so for 5 tosses, if you for 5 tosses, say 5 tosses you have H, T, H, H, and T. The probability would be, you would multiply half 5 times, if you're doing it one way, so that gives you 1 upon 32. Okay, or if you're doing it the second way as we did it, you have 5 spots here. Okay, and 2 choices for each. Okay, and that gives you 32. Multiplying 2 5 times gives you 32. So the probability of this again is 1 upon 32, because there is exactly one outcome that we are interested in, and there are 32 possible outcomes. Okay, so so this was just a a gentle exposure to you know what happens in this random walk thing. So we are going to come to our final problem now. Okay, and this will be a problem concerning the random walk on integers. So you have the integers here. Okay, all right, And what we want is, you do the random walk, and we want the first time you return to 0. This is what we want to calculate, or rather we want to calculate the probabilities of, the return times. As in, we want to calculate probability that this t is equal to some n, where n is some number. Okay, so what are the chances of this happening, right? So the first observation we make is that n, cannot be odd. You cannot come back to 0 in an odd number of steps, because say you take r steps to the right and l steps to the left, well, together they have to negate their effect, right? Because you want to return to where you started. So r has to be equal to l, and the total number of steps you will take is 2r. So you have to come back in an even number of steps. Okay, so firstly, probability that t is some odd number is going to be 0. So we are concerned about probability that t is even. Okay, so let's do an example. Let's find, probability that t is equal to 10. Okay, now so the way we will calculate this is probability t is equal to 10. So that will be number of favorable outcomes divided by number of total outcomes. Okay, now t is equal to 10. That means you have taken 10 steps, and at each step you have 2 options. So the number of outcomes is going to be, as we did before, you just multiply 2 10 times. Okay, that's going to be 2 raised to 10. So we just need to find this, the number of favorable outcomes. Okay, so the number of favorable outcomes is really, the same as finding the number of paths from 0 to 0 that return to 0 for the first time at the 10th step. So let's see how we can convert this into a problem on paths. Okay, a problem on, the grid. Okay, so as we said before, any path that you take, you can write it as, a bunch of h's and t's, right? Because that's all that matters. So suppose we had, a sequence h t h h t, so on. Okay, the way I'm going to convert this into a problem of paths on the grid is I'm going to keep a track of n. N will be number of steps taken, and the other thing will be our position. Okay, so for this particular sequence, first we had an h, so that means we have taken one step and we are now at position 1. Then there's another head, so that's 2, and we are at 2. Then there's a tail, so that's 3 and 1. There's a head and there's another head, so 4 2, so on. You just go on. Okay, so the thing to notice is that if we take the grid now, okay, as we saw before, suppose you have a head. Okay, suppose the first thing you get is a head, so that means you go to 1 comma 1, because you have made one step now, and now you're at position 1. So you get a step like this. If the second one is also a head, then you go to 2 comma 2, so you get another step. Then if it's a tail, then you go to 3 comma 1. Okay, so the basic point I'm trying to make here is heads means a step of this form, and tails means a step of this form. Okay, and now as paths, okay, we want to find the number of paths from 0 comma 0 to 10 comma 10 10 comma 0 that do not touch the x-axis. Okay, so it can go above or it can go below, but it should not touch the x-axis at any point. Okay, Now suppose I have a path from 0, 0 to 10, 0, okay, that does not touch the x-axis, then it has to stay on one side of the x-axis the entire time. Suppose it stays on the upper side, okay. So it always stays above the x-axis. So we've got a path like this, and then it does, and then it comes to 10, 0 and never touches the x-axis in the middle, okay. So I could just reflect it across the x-axis, okay, to get another path again from 0, 0 to 10, 0, okay, which still does not touch the x-axis, okay, but only it stays on the other side. My point being, okay, the number of paths from 0, 0 to 10, 0 that stay above the x-axis is equal to the number of paths that stay below. Okay, so we could just as well calculate one particular thing, one of these, and then multiply by 2, and that will give us our final answer. Okay, so I say we calculate this. Okay, so how do we calculate this? Okay, so we're going to start at 0, 0 and at 10, 0. Okay, and we want to stay above the x-axis the entire time. Now, as we saw before, we cannot directly apply the reflection principle. All right, because the reflection principle, you run into trouble when you have points on the x-axis. So we have to kind of change this problem. So the first observation we make is, if you want to stay above the x-axis, the first move has to be to 1, 1. And the next observation we make, okay, because we are still not done, we still have this point on the x-axis. The second observation we make is, if you do not want to touch the x-axis in the middle, the last point at which you are before you come to 10, 0 has to be 9, 1. Okay, because you want to be at 0 on the 10th step, so you have to be at 1 or -1, because these are the only 2 points from where you can go to 0 in one step, right? And you cannot be at 9, -1, okay, because that would mean you cross the x-axis at some point, which means you touch the x-axis at some time before 10. So you have to be here. Okay, so now we need to calculate number of paths from 1, 1 to 9, 1 that do not touch the x-axis. Okay, and this we know how to do because of the reflection principle. We have done this before. So instead of calculating this, as we do in the reflection principle, we say, okay, we will first calculate the number of paths from 1, 1 to 9, 1 that do touch the x-axis. And as we know, this is the same as, you reflect, and this is the same as calculating paths from 1, -1 to 9, 1 without any restriction. So we do the same trick of, the x plus y. So in this case, x plus y has to be 8, because there have to be 8, we have to go 8 units to the right, and x minus y will be equal to 2, because you want to move 2 units up. Right, so that means x is equal to 5 and y is equal to 3, and so this gives a total of 8. Choose 3. Now this is exactly the opposite of this thing here, that what we want to calculate, paths from 1, 1 to 9, 1 that do not touch the x-axis. Okay, so now we just need to calculate the number of paths from 1, 1 to 9, 1 without any restriction. And we can do the same x plus y thing again. So 8 units to the right, because 1 to 9, and x minus y has to be 0, because we don't want to move any units up. Okay, we want to stay at 1. We want to stay 1 unit up. So that means x plus y is equal to 4. We are solving the simultaneous equation, and putting it all together gives us this. Okay, so this thing that we wanted to calculate, the answer is this. All right, and we are still not done, because we wanted the number of paths from 0, 0 to 10, 0 that do not touch the x-axis. Okay, the fact that they do not touch the x-axis in the middle is given. Okay, because obviously they have to touch the x-axis at the endpoints because the two endpoints lie on the x-axis. So we said we need to calculate the answer we got before by 2, because this was just one part of the problem. We just got this thing that we calculated. That just gave us the number of paths from 1, 1 to 9, 1 that stayed above the x-axis, right? So we also need to calculate the number of paths from 0, 0 to 10, 10 which stay below the x-axis the entire time. So we need to multiply by 2 because the number of paths is the same. Okay, so that means we need to calculate, or rather, the answer. So I think it was H is 4, H is 3. Okay. And this was the total number of paths. All right, and this is actually the number of favorable outcomes. Okay, so to find the probability, we just need to divide by the total number of outcomes, which as we saw before was 2 raised to 10. So that means a probability that t equals 10 is this. Okay, and we found it, right? And 10 was just an example. You could just as well calculate the probability that t is equal to 50. So in this case in this case we calculated path from 0, 0 to 10, 0. So there you would calculate 0, 0 to 50, 0. Okay, and then this problem became, we finally the calculation that we really did. Okay, what we first did was a bunch of reductions. We just changed the problem a couple of times before, and then finally there was one problem which we actually solved, right? So this problem finally what it changed to was paths from 1, 1 to 9, 1 that stay above, or rather they do not touch that do not touch the x-axis. Okay, so then in that case, in the case of 50, what that would change to is 1, 1 to 49, 1, right? Because on the 49th step you want to be at 1, right? So that's what it would change to, and you can still, now for this problem you can apply the reflection principle and get the answer. And again, you could just as well do it for 100, or as we saw, any even number. It just cannot be an odd number, right? So yeah, so this is basically the end of our end of this lecture. And as I said, this reflection principle, as we have already seen in this lecture itself, it does not solve all problems. The reflection principle does have some issues with handling the case where one of the endpoints of the path, or both the endpoints of the path, they are on the x-axis. There is some trouble dealing with those issues, and you might want to see what causes that trouble, right? And the way we overcame that trouble was we shifted it to counting some paths for points above the x-axis, where as we saw the reflection principle works just fine, right? So you might want to see what causes these troubles, and you might you could even try to find solutions to problems where the reflection principle does not work, right? So yeah, so that's really the end of my lecture, and I hope I did not confuse you too much, and I hope you understood everything. So thank you for attending the lecture.